Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another skills technical training for graphic design. And today we're talking about a very important subject that I feel like a lot of people maybe need to review or at least understand better. And that is printer spreads, reader spreads, and impositions. And I'm going to kind of take it part by part here or piece by piece and show you where you would need to sort of focus on this and how to set it up correctly. So, what is a spread? What does it mean to have a spread? Again, for some of you, this might be really basic stuff, but when you're designing a document, if it is a single page document, something like this poster, you're never going to really have to worry about having any pages next to each other. In this case, it's a single page. It only has a front side. We're not going to have to worry about how the pages go together. It's just a single document. So you're not going to really have to worry about spreads for single page documents. In this case, it's an Illustrator, and we're not really going to have to worry about that, like I said. However, if we get into documents that have multiple pages, specifically documents with more than 2 pages, we start getting into spreads. We start getting a document that has spreads. And so in this particular magazine template, you will notice that this document starts with a single page over on the right-hand side. And as we go through the document, we are looking at how the booklet, or the magazine in this case, has been built. And so as we sort of flip through the booklet, we are looking at something called reader spreads. Okay, and generally when you are designing a magazine or a booklet, you are going to be working in reader spreads. And the reason it's called reader spreads is because this is how the document will look when you read it once it's printed. Okay, it's going to have these pages sitting next to each other. They're in order, so you can see 6 and 7. 8 is our back cover. Everything goes together as you would expect it to look as you're reading through the document once it's been printed. However, in the printing world, that's not how things work. If we were to take this document and print it the way that it is right now and then try to put it together, it just wouldn't work. All right, I'm going to try to explain as best I can how the printing world puts booklets together and why it's really important for us as graphic designers to understand this process to output our proofs correctly, so that if we do show a customer a proof and we want it to be accurate from a printing standpoint, it's going to go together correctly. All right, so first thing you should know is when you are making a document in InDesign, you should know that there is an option here to have spreads turned on, and that's called facing pages. And so as you're making a document in InDesign and you turn on facing pages, what that's going to do is it's going to put the pages next to each other, so you can actually see them in this sort of setup where the pages are facing one another. And that's really handy for when you're building multi-page documents, so you can see how the pages would sit next to each other. Maybe you want a graphic that goes across like this. That's very, very important. However, like I said, in the printing world, that's not how things work. They wouldn't take a document like this and just print it the way that it is, because in the printing world, what they do is they try to save on printing costs and paper. And so generally, if you have ever looked at a book, if you've ever taken apart a magazine, for example, you will notice that it is actually created with folded pieces of paper that have 2 pages on each side, so 4 pages per piece of paper, and it's stapled in the middle. Now, like I said, if you were to take your InDesign document and just print it the way that it is, you would not be able to put it together in a magazine like we see here. In the actual printing world, we have something called impositions, and this is how books and magazines are printed. Imagine that these are giant pieces of paper. huge pieces of paper. These are called signatures. And a signature is it could be a 16 page, it could be a 12, 8 page, usually multiples of 4, but it's a giant piece of paper where the printers try to fit as many pages of a book or a magazine on one sheet of paper. So this is how it would look, and this is the order that they would be in. And you can see here it's indicated that it would fold in the middle, and then it would fold in the middle, it'd fold once again, and then the edges would be cut off on the side and at the top, and you would end up with a little book of 16 pages. And that's how we would get to this point where we would have these little individual pages that get stapled together. Okay, so enough of the sort of technical side of things. How do we get to that point? Well, if we go back to our InDesign document and we take a look at it, like I said, it's very important as designers that we build our booklets in reader spreads. Obviously, we want to know what it's going to look like once it's all put together. However, if we are going to print it out for proofing or even to create an imposed document that would go to a printer, what we would do is we'd go under File and we would go to the very last option here, that is Print Booklet. Okay, and what Print Booklet's going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to create a proof or a print set up correctly for the type of binding that we would want in our final result. So if we go to Print Booklet, you will see here that just ignore these top options here, but it's going to ask us what type of booklet it is. And so a magazine, as we recognize it with staples down the spine, is known as a saddle stitch. Okay, so when we look at this booklet, this is called a saddle stitch. And the reason for that is it sits on sort of a saddle-looking bench that it's folded across, and then the staples are driven through the sheets of paper. All right, so saddle stitching's most common. We also have perfect binding. We got consecutive prints. In this case, we're going to leave it with saddle stitch, and we're going to get a little preview. All right, now it's very important that you set up your print settings, and because I'm not set up or hooked up to a printer here, I'm going to actually create a PDF to show you what would get printed out, because otherwise, again, it's kind of hard to show that in just a screen recording here. But you would go to your print settings and make sure it's set up to a sheet that is large enough to hold the imposed booklet. So generally, if it's an 8.5/11, you're going to go to a sheet that's approximately 12 by 18. It's also known as tabloid oversized. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to see the booklet as it should print, okay? And I should mention that in your print settings, you're going to want to make sure you've got crop marks and bleeds and whatever marks are required in the skills booklet. But generally, crop marks, bleed, registration, and page information, most common. You also want to have your bleed turned on, also very important. And that's going to give us a little preview. And you'll notice in the preview here that it has sort of in blue the numbers that need to go beside each other to create what's known as printer spreads. Okay, because this was an 8-page document, we have 8 and 1 that are sitting next to each other. So this is your back cover, and this is your front cover. And then as we go through the document with this little slider here, we can look at the next spread. It's 2 and 7. And you'll notice here now the design that was going across the middle has been split, because what it's going to do is later on here at 6 and 3, it's going to join its other half. And that's because when it gets folded and put into the booklet and stapled together, this is the proper order. This is the order it needs to be in for it to be output properly to create that booklet. And so if I hit print, I'm making a PostScript file here. You don't have to worry about that because, again, I'm just showing you. I would hit print, and it's going to either print to the printer if you're hooked to a printer. In this case, I'm making a PostScript file. And I'm just going to run this through Distiller so you guys can see what this looks like. I have a profile set up for it. Again, you don't need to worry about this if you are printing to a printer. So I'm just going to run this, and this is going to simulate what it would look like as it printed to a actual printer. And so if I open this, you will see, I'm just actually going to open it with Acrobat so you can actually see a little better here rather than preview. You will see that it has created a document here that is properly set up in that order that I had talked about. Okay, so here's 8 and 1, 2 and 7, 6 and 3, 4 and 5. Okay, and so that is the correct way to output an imposition and to print your document in printer spreads. Again, if this came out on a printer, let's say two-sided, you could take these sheets, you could fold them in half, you could stitch them down the middle, and your booklet's going to go together beautifully. All right, a very, very important thing to understand, like I said, sometimes you will be graded on your proof and how it goes together, especially with multi-page documents. And so knowing a little bit about printer spreads and reader spreads, impositions and signatures is a very, very big part of understanding how printing works, and obviously something that every graphic designer should at least be knowledgeable about.